Penn State gets a commitment in the transfer portal from a wide receiver, no less, Kyron Hudson. Of course, last night happening at 8 o'clock. People were clamoring for us to talk about it at 9 o'clock. And so I want to get the conversation going here on the show as quickly as possible. So, Fitz, Kyron Hudson, Penn State, wide receiver, no duh fit. What do you know about the situation, and how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, first guy they brought in for an official visit. Kyron Hudson came in on Sunday, visited on Monday, and by Monday night he had committed. So I think it's a fairly sizable pickup. You look at what Penn State's trying to do with that room, and it's not just one guy. I think they're going to continue to expand that net and see what they can get in terms of what can fit, because what they've got right now hasn't proven it can take it to the next. The final level. Hey, they got to the Big Ten championship game. That's great. They've done a lot of really good things. I, again, think Trey Wallace is a better player than a lot of Penn State fans give him credit for. But from top to bottom, that room has, performed to the standard that we kind of set for it going into the year, and that's not a compliment to that group. So right. I think Kyron Hudson comes in and gives it gives them a toughness, an element of toughness that they really seem to need. I mean, you just look at his tape and it's contested catches. I mean, I don't think he does anything super otherworldly as an athlete. I don't think he's anything crazy in terms of like how he works. And, you're going to see the drops thing thrown around. I mean, I haven't watched all the tape to verify whether that's true or not, but it seems like his catch percentage is pretty darn solid. So if that's what you're looking for, he was in a really good room. We talked all week leading up to the USC game about how deep and how good that room is and talented that room is. And, I think it's a little bit different than Julian Fleming coming in last year. I think that's the place that people want to jump to in terms of comparisons. But I think that, he offers a little bit more upside in terms of what he can do, from an athletic, physical perspective.
He is a really interesting watch, just diving into the film this morning with everything going on. Nate, what do you think of the addition, and how do you feel about the prospect of what people are saying in the chat, which is basically this is Julian Fleming 2.0? I'm not asking for your analysis of Kyron Hudson or anything, but just the perception of, is anything going to be good enough for the Penn State receiver room when it comes to additions if it's not somebody you've heard of with a superstar name?
Yeah, I don't. And this is to be investigated and found out. But I would be surprised if he's the only receiver that they bring in.
Right.
So, we'll see. Look, it's very easy to, from the outset of this, just say, oh, well, they're going to bring in a stud receiver, or they're going to bring in a stud defensive end or tackle, whatever it is, right? You look at these positions of obvious need. Your intention might be that, but actually getting the ball over the goal line is a different story, right? It demands, in many cases, previous relationships. It demands money, right? They gotta have that wiggle room on the player talent acquisition pool. So yeah, I think it's a start, and we'll like if this is the blockbuster, then it will have been a shortcoming as far from what it seems like.
That's fair.
I just don't. I do not get the sense right now that that's what this is.
Can I ask a follow-up then? And either of you can answer this. We had the conversation, and we will have the conversation in just a moment about Drew Aller and Bo Pribula and those conversations being linked and those announcements being linked. But does this also, in your minds, foreshadow an exodus from the room, given that they're bringing in players? They have young guys that are going to be filtering up the roster. And of course, as far as I know off the top of my head, Fleming is the only player that's out of eligibility in the room. So talking about adding another player, bringing in this player, Kyron Hudson, right now, do you think this is going to have a roster reset feel by the time all of this is said and done?
Nate, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, look, it's the data set is large enough, and I think, look, you can pick out little hints, right? Tysier Denmark is a really tough player. And I'm quoting the word tough by James Franklin. Okay. Has he said that about anybody else in that room? Has he used that word?
No.
So, there is an overall profile, I think, of player that they want that doesn't currently exist. And, the clock has been ticking on production for a while. So it's just a matter of who has met the, like, it's all a balance, right? You take as many as you can get that you think will elevate the top end of the room, but also you can't be so aggressive that you don't retain, like, you have it's just this constant juggling act of who are the players that you still see an upside for that will have an impact, right? To me, it's like, hey, well, what does Peter Gonzalez look like next year? Like, I don't have an answer to that.
Hopefully healthy.
Hopefully healthy for him.
Yeah.
I think on the front end, the conversation was intriguing and encouraging because, again, he brought that style of toughness to that room. So it's just, I do not know individually what the futures hold for Caden Saunders, right?
Right.
Certainly Omari Evans. Like, you got to wonder with some of those guys, and then some of the guys down the depth chart that didn't really make an impact this year, but have been in the program for a couple of years. But it's going to be interesting to see how that room takes shape over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and what's the counter argument from that group if they say we don't like you bringing in transfers? It's like, I mean, what is, how does that work?
Well,
right.
And I think a big part of it is, hey, and this is the fascinating dynamic of, and the push and pull of today's free agency, transfer portal free agency, is, hey, if you want to stay, that's fine. We don't have any money for you. Like, this is your package. This is the offer, is no increase from last year, if anything, right? So I just think these are all the player personnel acquisition, transfer portal conversation items that are constantly evolving. And so it's going to be interesting to see who else pops up on Penn State's radar, if at all, or who Penn State likes, right? Like, who does Penn State fall in love with and say, hey, we're willing to empty the bank account for this guy? Because I'm sorry, I'm rambling here, but one more thing that I do think is integrally important here is maybe the best quarterback in the country just announced he's coming back for 2025, right? Like, if he's not the number one overall quarterback out of next year's draft class, I don't know necessarily who is. Certainly he's going to be in the conversation for that. If that is not a selling point, if that is not an area for Penn State to say, hey, there is a wide open opportunity for somebody to step in and be a dog, I don't know what else that looks like.
There's plenty of vacancy at the Hotel Aller, where there's lots of targets to go around if you want to come in and go and take them. Fitz, you and I have this conversation all the time. I want to get back to specifically Kyron Hudson, and then I'll give a quick thumbnail scout of what I've seen of him over maybe 50 snaps that I've seen so far. Does fit matter here when it is a more advanced player? Because we have the conversation of, does he fit the draft class? Does that player fit a style or a profile that we can get to kind of an idea of what Marcus Hagans wants out of a receiver? He's now entering, I think, his fourth year in football, so he is a little bit more defined as to what his traits are and how he would fit into an offense. Does that matter more for you as a wide receiver that you're expecting to contribute next year?
Absolutely. Fit is everything if you're a wide receiver coming in. I mean, it's scheme, and it's how to certainly prop yourself up for the next level if you are a next level player. And this guy seems to be a borderline next level player. Like, and if he goes to the draft this year, I don't think he's getting drafted, but I think he's got an opportunity, given the body of work that he's put together, to be a solid guy. I mean, Tinsley's the obvious name that comes up here. But of course he came from Western Kentucky, not USC.
Yeah.
The flip side there is Clemson just took a receiver last night in the portal, by the way, from Southeast Missouri State. There's no blueprint to who's going to be successful. And if you look over the last several years, it's not necessarily the small program guys jumping up. It's not necessarily the big program guys. I mean, Tez Johnson just torched Penn State, and he, it was not a situation where there's any real, I'll say blueprint, but that's probably not the right word for it. It's just you never know where these guys are going to come from. And I think that's kind of the hope that comes with it. It is funny to see Penn State fans immediately pivot to who's next and who's going to be the next guy, because, it's so much tougher than that. And they've got a couple of guys set up for visits later this week. Eric Rivers is the one that, kind of intrigues me the most. I know you did a breakdown on him, but gives yourself something diverse in that receiver room. And I think Hudson is a guy that sort of replaces, upgrades Julian Fleming for Penn State.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I think you're looking for Kyron Hudson. And you mentioned Mitchell Tinsley. He reminds me of a slightly faster Mitchell Tinsley, where they were talking about he needed to get faster within the program. And I think that will be the goal for Kyron Hudson. But at the same time, unbelievable hands, incredible catch radius. If you remember, he made maybe the catch of the year in the first week against LSU between two defenders, one hand over the back of his head, the Odell Beckham in the middle of the field. So the conversation about his hands and drops, to me, is about the contested catch conversation, because a drop, and again, we can go by PFF data, you can go by your eye test, and those things are two separate things. A drop is the receiver is responsible for catching a catchable football that he didn't catch. If there's a contested situation, that is a different category. He caught 52% of those passes, but my biggest thing is 35% of his total targets were contested. So this is a guy who, again, profiles as a possession receiver, a guy you're going to throw the ball to and trust him to come down with the ball. That is an area where Drew Aller has not done that as much. And I think that's also an area where Miller Moss was not that type of receiver either. Folded into the fact that Zachariah Branch was the number one target, and they were doing a lot to get him the football, really bending over backwards to get him the football in a lot of catch and run situations. So with Kyron Hudson, I think he's a quality fit. I think the conversation about replacing Julian Fleming is fair, but I also think it's an upgrade in that situation over he is not slow. So, these conversations of, is he fast? He's not fast. Is he slow? He's not slow. And you don't have to be one or the other. And that is also the hardest evaluation, when you are not clearly one or the other. How does that then translate to an offense that might get you the ball and have you more of a focus in the offense overall? Because he could also put up 1,000 yards if he has a jump ball quarterback. So it just there's a bunch of different ways and fits, as he said. There's no way that there's no blueprint for how these things shake out, because situation matters. And at that particular position, when it comes to receiver, there's a bunch of different ways you can win. There's a bunch of different skills you can have that translate into those schemes and situations.